The more he continued to work in the construction industry, the stronger Kave's displeasure with the current state of society grew. It was at this moment that a turning point came. The wealthy merchant, Lord Songama Bay, sought him out to construct a private mansion. Lord Songama Bay had become fairly famous, but Kaveh had no idea that this lord's name was in fact Dory until they met, nor did he have any reckoning of her power and riches. She only had two conditions for this mansion: that it be large and extravagant. Kaveh would probe her concerning design style and other details, but she was unconcerned with such. Even amongst his clients, Dory stood out as a bit of an oddity. She did business, but seemed to care little for what researchers thought. She wanted her mansion built in a secluded place for business purposes, or so she claimed, and Kaveh was told not to ask too many questions and simply aimed to make a truly awe-inspiring estate. As for aesthetics, Dory neither cared for nor stopped him from doing anything he wished. Kaveh realized almost immediately how rare it was to come by such a commission. A mansion construction project without limitations meant that he could put his all into it. Party A would fork out the resources, while Party B would do the work. Was this not how their business should be? And was allowing academic views to restrict development and growth not utterly wrong-headed? So it was with that Kaveh threw himself into planning these designs with a sudden fervor, and, in his role as Party B, he advised Dory to make some adjustments. A true mogul could not simply live in the mountains. If this estate was to go down in history, it had to be something of truly legendary beauty. A garden was a must, with flowers carefully selected, of course, with the input of professional botanists. The conceptualization must be bold, the planning conscientious. The buildings themselves would prioritize practicality, but the requested warehouses and facilities would rest upon a luxuriant foundation. And as for location, well, the cliffside in the northern mountains looked good. Lord Songama Bay would awaken every day with a window onto the loveliest natural views that could be had. Though Dory would constantly insist that the mansion did not have to be close to a cliff, Kaveh's engineering spirit and aesthetic appetites drove him on to convince her otherwise. Thus did the project begin with a flourish, and as the days passed, work proceeded apace under Kaveh's watchful eye. Yet his ideals would not be so easily achieved, for though Kaveh's diligence in selecting a site had been immaculate, and he had made every consideration, he could not have anticipated the speed at which the withering would expand its reach that year. When the work was 70% complete, on a quiet night, the withering crept in silently, destroying all that had been built overnight. The sight of his creation's devastated corpse struck Kaveh like a furious thunderbolt. Dory, who had rushed down upon receiving the news, was in incomparable fury, demanding that Kaveh leave the project. Though the forest rangers quickly dispersed the withering, the buildings were beyond saving. Yet he knew that it would be difficult to ever get a chance of the sort again, and so he begged Dory to let him finish the palace of Alcazarzaray. Dory would point out the crucial problem with stark sharpness. He had been the one to insist on the change of site. Now that the palace had been destroyed, taking the investment put in thus far with it, how could the project continue, even assuming that she did not pursue the matter with him? If they were to rebuild the structure, who would bear the cost for the losses? Kaveh sat atop the ruins as he contemplated this all night long. He had his savings and the property his parents had left behind. That had once been his home, but now it was just an empty building. And what was home, anyway? An architect like him knew better than most that a construction bereft of a family or people to dwell in it was no home. It was simply a building. When the sun rose, Kaveh returned to Sumeru City and sold that house. Adding all the proceedings from that sale, along with his savings, to the funds Dory had provided with him, he was able to come up with 70% of the necessary mora required, with Dory coming up with the rest. Thus was the palace of Alcazarzaray built on a beautiful, sunny day. Kaveh had given all he possessed to build a legendary palace that did not belong to him in the slightest. He did not earn a single mora on this project. On the contrary, some slight overspending on the follow-up work would leave him heavily in debt to Dory. While Kaveh made a token show of resisting, he knew in his heart that he could not deny the fact that he did indeed owe this debt. His heart was once again consumed by that old guilt, and Lord Songama Bay, shrewd merchant that she was, could immediately perceive that he was paying not for her sake, but for that of his ideals. And if someone wanted to martyr their entire fortune on the altar of their ideals, who was she to stop them? Construction was ultimately just business, but ideals were priceless. As for how Kaveh would come to be homeless afterward, that is a different story.